Warm greetings, everyone. Welcome to another session of Friday.Waters.Theses Club. Today's Friday.Water.Theses Club session is on laser land leveling in groundwater management, the case of Northwest India. And we have with us our speaker for the day, Subhash Surendran Padmaja. I hope I have pronounced his name correctly, but before I invite Subhash, a brief overview of what Friday Waters series is about. Friday Water series is an extension of the flagship program Wednesdays for Water of the WforW Foundation. The idea of Friday Waters is to wet the Fridays with fun-filled and yet fruitful activities for the future generation. Friday Water series has water talkies, book reading, thesis club, which is today, water arts and meet a maestro, and some of them taking place every month depending on the availability of the speakers. The focus of Friday Waters Thesis Club is on bringing students and scholars who have done or are doing their research on some aspects of the water matters into the session in order to discuss with them their identified problem, aim, objectives, methods they are applying, the research design, fieldwork, findings, learning, and many more things, and their personal experience probably, and what they are looking forward in future or way forward. In the process of Friday Waters thesis, we would like to know making of the research and the contribution it aims to make in science as well as in society. The session is also meant to increase the outreach of the research subject and the researcher in discussion today. So for today's discussion, we have Subhash, and as he's going to talk about land leveling in groundwater management case of Northwest India. I just come from Ahmedabad, Germany, so I'm still in Ahmedabad. Sorry. But thank you, Subhash, for giving us this opportunity to discuss with you. And I must also thank Anindita to introduce Subhash to us. Before I invite you to make your presentation and set the rules of the game, a brief biography of yours as a protocol of the session. Subhash Surendran Padmaja is an agricultural and development economist with a strong interdisciplinary background in behavioral science, institutional economics, and impact assessment. He recently completed his PhD at the Center for Development Research, ZEF, if I am pronouncing it again rightly, University of Bonn in Germany, where his research focus was on adaptation and impacts of precision land leveling technology in India. Subhash is a scientist with Indian Council of Agricultural Research, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare in the Government of India, and has previously worked with CJIR in the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, contributing to projects across South and Southeast Asia. He's a recipient of Dr. Uma Lele Mentorship Fellowship and was a visiting research scholar at Cornell University in USA. Thank you, Subhash. And the rules of the games are very simple. You will have around 25 minutes of your talk time. It's like don't see it as a defense because you already defended and you are already a seasoned scholar. But then we will have some Q&A, which is from my side. I'm taking place of Professor Sonia Gupta today, who is our regular discussant from Voxen University. And then we'll open the floor for everyone to engage with you. Is that fine with you?
Yes.
Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansee. Thank you, Mansee, for the invitation to this session. As Mansee mentioned, I'll be sharing the research which I did out of my PhD titled Laser Land Leveling in Groundwater Management, Case of Northwestern India. This was a PhD work I did at Center for Developmental Research, University of Bonn, Germany, under the supervision of Professor Martin Keim and co-supervised with Vijesh Krishna and Professor Thomas Heckley and Lisa. To give you a brief outline about this presentation, some brief introduction about the topic, followed by 3 studies which I did part of this broader PhD work, which to just summarize the key findings from them and concluding all of them together and focusing on the policy implications from the study. The whole motivation behind the study comes from how intensive agriculture production systems, especially intensive production agriculture systems across the world, how they are exploiting the natural resources. The natural resources specifically I'm mentioning is groundwater. Globally, groundwater is declining. one of the main reasons for the global groundwater decline is its use in irrigation. If you focus the region which I'm studying, northwestern India, this has one of the fastest depleting groundwater zone in the whole world. There were different policy and technological solutions recommended in this region. One of a technology-based solution is called as laser land leveling. To just give you a brief background about this technology, laser land leveling is a tractor-operated machinery. As you could see from the image in the presentation, it's attached to a tractor. What it does is levels the land. Leveling is a land operation done before sowing of crops. There are conventionally it is used. There are different ways of leveling. What this laser land leveling or does is a precision-based leveling at a tone of plus and minus 2 centimeters. So it levels at a higher precision so that the whole field is leveled. If you compare a leveled versus unleveled field, as you could see from the picture here, in a system where you use a flooded irrigation and there is a standing water required. For example, in case of northwestern India, the major cropping system is rice wheat. For rice, you need a standing water of about a feet for almost like 2/3 of its growing season. In northwestern India, especially Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh, this water is pumped from the groundwater, and there is a stagnant water on the field. So if you compare the leveled versus unleveled field, level field requires less water compared to an unleveled field. So it's also there. This would lead to less groundwater being pumped for irrigation. This is usually done before the planting of rice or sugarcane, especially in Western Uttar Pradesh, in the month of April, May. And the usual recommendation is once in every 3 years. However, farmers do it in different frequencies. Also, unlike other technologies, something unique about this is that if you want to rent this technology, the renting is on an hour basis, not based on area. Usually, when you use machineries, this technology is the rent you pay is based on how much area you're covering, but in this case, it's based on the number of hours they are employing this technology. To give a background about the evolution of technology, it was earlier developed in US around 1970s. It was introduced in Europe and Russia around 1980s. In early 2000, it was brought to India, especially in northwestern India, by CGIAR institutes. CGIAR Institute is a group of international organizations which work in agriculture, specifically International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, which is a Spanish acronym called CIMMYT, and International Rice Research Institute. They introduced this technology in collaboration with Indian organizations like Indian Council of Agriculture Research and state agriculture universities. This, even though it was introduced in 2001, still like recently it has been reintroduced in Southeast Asia, specifically in Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia. So this is like still a technology which is being experimented across the world. Something unique about India is that northwestern India, even though initially the technology was brought from US, over time there is a local ecosystem evolved. There are local manufacturers in Punjab or like Haryana, they develop those technologies. And so we have a system, local ecosystem of developing this technology. This is a classic case of what we call as linear technology transfer. The technology is developed in an research institutions and then transferred to pharma. There were some puzzling questions with respect to technology, which was introduced since last 20 years, like 20, 25 years. It was introduced initially in northwestern India in 2001. The few puzzling questions were that first, why are farmers using this technology? To give a background effort, like why? Because the main benefit of using this technology is groundwater saving or like water saving. But in Punjab or in Haryana and Western Uttar Pradesh, especially in Punjab, the electricity used for irrigation is free. So why farmers are using this technology? Are they worried about the long-term impact of groundwater extraction? And This is a bit puzzling thing to ask. What we call as there is no water market. There's no value, direct value associated with using of this water in this region, and then why farmers are using such a water saving technology. Second is like why and how this technology got widely adopted. This is one of those technology which is like widely adopted in the region. And I say widely adopted, the existing adoption rates are almost 80%. 80% of farmers have at least used it once or they're frequently using it. So this is quite unique compared to other resource conservation technologies, like technologies used to save water. This is very higher adoption rate. So there was this puzzling question and why and how this technology got widely adopted. Third was there are a lot of studies done on like this technology establishing that there is farm level water saving. So if you're using these technologies, you can save water at farm level, but would it lead to aggregate level actual groundwater saving? We'll discuss about why this question is important. This became the basis of the research question for my study, in which we are trying to answer 3 questions: why, how, and what was the effect of this technology at groundwater. For this study, we did a large survey across almost 291 villages with a sample size of 1,661 households across Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh. As you could see, this is also the region which has highest groundwater depletion zone. For the study 1, I used the data from Punjab. For study 2, I used data from both household data from both Punjab and Uttar Pradesh. And for the study 3, I used a village level data. It's 291, the data we collected from 291 villages. The first study, which we are like trying to answer why farmers are adopting this technology. As I said, this is a classical case of linear technology transfer. What it means is that technology is developed by the R&D organization, transferred to a farmer. So the assumption is that in such cases, farmers adopt the technology once they realize their benefit. However, as I said before, the puzzle behind is that the cost of electricity for irrigation in this region is negligible or free in case of Punjab, or bit negligible compared to Haryana or Uttar Pradesh. And there are a lot of studies which focused on early stages of adoption. They looked into the studies mostly focused on 2010, 11, where they okay, what's happening with this adaptation? We have very few studies which looks into in a later stage of adoption, see that why farmers have adopted it. Also, a lot of the studies focused on the designed benefits. When I say designed benefits, they look into when a technology is developed by an R&D organization, they focus on these are the benefits, and this is the reason why farmers are adopting this technology. The assumption is that once those benefits are realized, farmers would adopt it. But the why question, the interaction with farmers and how this farmers, when you like, let's go into the conceptual framework of it. When a technology is introduced to a farmer, a lot of the theories behind is like, okay, farmers are adopting it because there are some profits out of it, or there are some social or cognitive factors which limits it. This is what we call as early stages of adoption. But however, we know that over time, adoption is a dynamic process, right? It's not just one-time thing. Farmers keep on continually using it. Over time, there are several other factors adding to it. There's a dynamic learning process happening. Farmers are experimenting with this technology. They're learning about this technology. And this shapes their perception. This shapes their experience. This shapes they updates the knowledge or their thing about why they're adopting it. For this, what I did was doing also qualitative interviews with farmers and other stakeholders which are related to this technology, in addition to the household survey, focused on the main benefits which are like set by the technology developers. Like one is, there is some yield gains, because once you have a level field, the undulation, it would lead to higher yields. Also the irrigation hours which could be saved because of the technology adoption. To understand this why question, I used a mixed method. Mixed method in this case, I'm using both qualitative and quantitative data. For qualitative data, the usual approach is like you do interviews, you talk to farmers. Then what we do is that you translate those interviews into quotes and use the quotes and quotations from those farmers to understand what's happening. Quantitative analysis is what I did is what we call as an embedded design. What farmers said us, these are the benefits. We try to quantify the data using surveys. Then I used a machine learning causal approach to assess this. What we found is that farmers perceive there are benefits. There are like an increase in income. 79% of farmers perceive that there was some increase in income because of using this technology, mainly due to the yield gains. And there is some reduction in cost of cultivation because of the additional income, because of the other additional benefits, such as reduced use of fertilizer and reduced use of weeding, such benefits coming from reduction cost of cultivation. However, like 94% of them said that there is a reduced water use for irrigation. So this is a perceived benefits. When you ask farmers what are the benefits, this were the benefits farmers were attributing to. This was much more interesting when we move away from this quantitative data to much more qualitative insight on like why you're using it. One of the things which I did throughout my interview was challenging them. When you ask a farmer why you're using it, the first standard response you get from them is that water saving. It's quite interesting, and they say 25% water saving. It was quite interesting that how you say that it's 25%. It's very consistent across a lot of farmers. What I realized is that this 25% value also comes from what the extension agents told them from the studies done. So you could see the existing literature says it's 25%. So farmers are just saying you back what exactly they've heard from them. So it was interesting. So when you kind of probe it further, something which they were attributing to is like what they said was that it looks good. So when you level a field, it gives a very visual appeal. There is in literature, there's a discussion on Bordosian perspective on like how a leveled field attribute to skills of a farmer. You see, if you're a good farmer, if your farm is like well leveled, well maintained, there is such indirect attributes. Also, the system there, even though electricity is free, for example, in case of Punjab, they're on a rotation basis. So even though electricity is free, it's available for 8 hours. What they do is like fix their HPF motors and land. There are a lot of heuristics involved in like how much horsepower of motor they have for irrigating the field and what they could irrigate in 8 hours. And they would like to reduce the time required for irrigation because they don't want to risk it. If there is some issue with the accessibility of electricity due to some failure in the grid connection, that could also lead to a lot of issues around it. So they don't want to have those issues. Then also this technology is compatible with a lot of new technologies emerging, such as direct seeded rice. So if you have a level field or mechanical rice transplanter, if you have a level field, it has a lot of, it's easy to have or use this technology in a level field. What we find from this is that unlike we thought that, oh, the main goal of using this technology is reducing water for irrigation, there are different heterogeneous goals. So from the interviews, what we found out is that the benefits what farmers are sharing is not the same. Different farmers have different benefits or different goals they are trying to achieve from using this technology. So it's much more complicated. And this is also evolving because of years of experience they got experimenting this technology. Looking into the main benefits which were designed by technology developers to see, is there a benefit on rice yield? Something interesting for me is that even though technology developers said that recommended to use it once every 3 years, farmers are using it in different frequencies. There are farmers using it every year. There are farmers using it every 2 years. There are farmers using it every 3 years. And there are farmers who have used it once and they left using this technology. So interestingly, what we found is that if based on the quantitative methods we used, the gain from using this technology is about 200 kgs. That's basically 2 quintal. This has been actually supported by the qualitative interviews. Farmers usually say that they get 2 bags extra, 2 or 3 bags of extra rice if you're using this technology. This is an interesting aspect because this gain does not compensate the cost of using this technology. So it's not like they're not trying to maximize their profit. That doesn't offset the cost of using this technology. That was pretty interesting. The key takeaway from this study was that technology development is a continuous process. You need to look into technology adoption, not only in the early stages, but also the later stages. We could learn a lot from it. Also, farmers' perception matters a lot. You could see that that was a main driver behind adoption of this technology. And there are like different benefits around or co-benefits associated with the technology, which is often not realized, because often in a quantitative study, we try to check off what we assume as the main benefit, and we try to just validate those assumptions. Second work, which focuses on like how this work is published in Agriculture Water Management. You could read that, so I'm just briefly explaining it. How question is important here because machineries are what we call as indivisible technologies. Unlike seed or fertilizer, where farmers could buy the technology based on the size of the land, you need to buy the whole machinery. So it's like not every farmer can own the technology. So the usual mechanism evolved is renting of machineries from others. There are a lot of studies around renting of machineries. Interesting aspects is that existing studies always talk about cooperatives or custom hiring centers as the only institutional mechanism for renting of technology. What I found in literature is that it might be known to the people who work much closer to the field. The most common institutional mechanism of renting of this technology is individual private service providers. Individual private service providers, basically farmers or individuals who own this tractor and the machinery, and they rent it out to rent it out the technology to farmers. This is interesting given the context that unlike tractor, this is only used 2 months in a year, and based on this study, what we see is that they operate for 2 months, 24 hours with 3 drivers on rotation. So it's like an interesting aspect. If you travel across northwestern India around April and May, you could even see this machines being operated at night. So you could see these lights blinking in the farms. So that's an interesting aspect, which what we found is that individual service provisioning is an interesting institutional mechanism for adoption of technology, especially technologies what we call as indivisible technologies or machinery technologies. So what we kind of conclude is that unlike the traditional centralized model where you have cooperatives or like custom hiring centers, which are at least at a very aggregate level, a single cooperatives or custom hiring centers owning like 10 machines. This individual service providers, which are like mostly available at every village, they may own just one machineries, which is more accessible on-demand model, which is much more. This was the main reason for like higher adoption or diffusion of the technology because it was accessible to the farmers in the same village. Existing policies mostly focus on like custom hiring centers or like cooperatives, but we need to move away from that and provisioning more towards individual service providers. Again, we cannot generalize it for all the technologies. This is a case where context matters a lot. For example, in Punjab, Haryana, there are already tractors available, so it was easy for them to just buy an additional machinery, which is laser land leveling, and then attach to the tractor and use it. Third study is what we looked into is that what is the effect? Okay, fine, there is some gains at farm level from using water. Does this transform into groundwater level benefits? Why this question is puzzling is that existing studies, a lot of those existing studies which looked into water saving technologies don't see such effects. There are technologies which saves water at farm level, but does not save at groundwater level. This is called as Givon's paradox or rebound effects in literature. What it means is that the water saved by farmers, it could be used for other purposes. So often what happens is that they expand the area under water usage. Also, like they could also cultivate other crops which have much higher water usage. They could repurpose the water saving, what they've saved from using this technology. Laser land leveling was an interesting case because usually you don't find technologies which have higher adoption rate, like such a wider adoption rate to see. Because if you need to see an effect of such technology adoption at the groundwater, you need to have a wider adoption. So this was an interesting case to look into. Okay, if a technology has achieved its full potential, like 80% is a good potential, like achieve adoption potential achieved. So in that case, would it lead to actual groundwater saving? This is again based on what we did was combining the village level adoption data with observational well data. Central Groundwater Board has this 3,286 observational wells in the region which I was studying. So what I did was matching the village level data with nearest observational well, which becomes a proxy for the village level groundwater data. Then we used all climate data and other village level characteristics as control. And we looked into what is the effect of adoption at village level. The method it follows is what we call a staggered difference in difference. It's a fancy term. What it does is basically, if you want to see an impact, we need to compare villages which has not adopted versus village which has adopted. But over time, there is a decline in groundwater. You could see there are villages which has adopted earlier compared to villages which has adopted later. So what we're comparing is villages which has adopted versus villages which have not adopted, considering the variation in the time and as well as the spatial variations. What we see is that over time, the groundwater levels are increasing. What we are saying is groundwater levels are increasing is that the groundwater is depleting. It's like the region which I am studying, based on the villages which I'm studying, the decline is 40 centimeter per year. And it's not uniform across the region. It depends on a lot of other factors like kind of pumps used in that region, the alluvial deposit, and how close it to the canals. What we found is that because of using these technologies, in the villages which adopted this technology, it has saved groundwater to an extent of 3.7 meter. Especially in the month, we observe this effect in the month of May, which is usually the summer month, in which the effects are more visible compared to other months, because in other months you have a lot of variation due to the rainfall. There are different robustness checks we did to make sure that how this estimates would vary. Even based on those robustness estimates, we see that we could, with some degree of certainty, we could say that for the period in which the technology was adopted, it has saved up to 3 meter of groundwater. So this 3 meter of groundwater is significant if you look at it from a statistics point of view. And it is compared to other policy or technology-based intervention done in this region, this is quite substantial. And it could save up to 5 cubic kilometer per year of total water, which is quite good compared to the existing technology or policy options. The conclusion we're drawing from this study is that the technology has led to some groundwater decline. It has saved groundwater. And why? Because there was a widespread adoption of this technology. 80% of farmers are using this technology. That's why it led to saving at groundwater level. Farmers are continually adopting it, not just because of its benefit from saving water, but there's different core benefits associated with this technology. And for such promotion of such technologies, we need to also take care of emerging institutional mechanism and promote those mechanisms. However, the caveat is that according to the existing groundwater decline, this is not enough. This technology per se is not enough to save the groundwater decline in this region. We come up with 3 policy implications. First is research institutions should also probe the co-benefits associated with the technology. Second, individual private service providers should be promoted as an institutional mechanism. Third, this technology is not a solution, but we call as this could be a sustainable transition solutions. In long term, we need to switch away from rice wheat systems. However, it's a political economy, and it would take quite a while to have this transition. Till those transitions happens, such technology could be a temporary solution or a sustainable transition solution. That's from my study. Thank you.
Hey, that was quite interesting and motivating for me. Thank you so much, Subhash, for this quite precise presentation. You have raised more questions than I had before when I saw your presentation, and I was well prepared with some notes. But then I'm going to do a little bit of rephrasing. But before that, a brief summary that I have understood you rightly to pose my questions, as I have already mentioned to you in our conversation before, that I am that naive citizen who has no clue A to Z about what's going on in the water sector. Okay, so from that background, what I learned from you that here is a new technology, which is of course not the savior of the groundwater extraction reduction, but there are examples through your study and other study that it shows that there is some kind of reduction in groundwater extraction because it saves, and you could see from farmers' perception, which is backed by the science, and a measurement of two extra bags of what do you call it, the yield, as at the end on the other side, around 25% of groundwater extraction. So just my first understanding. So there is a beautiful machine which is kind of looks manual from the pictures, but and it has some bit of course, other energy consumptions at the same time. What was very interesting for me when I now heard you, or rather than seeing your presentation, the linearity of the technology, the cost effectiveness you are talking about, but at the same time, you also told us about the relationship with land holding, which makes farmers also rent the machine. And by the way, I have seen many farmers from Punjab using them in bringing them in Madhya Pradesh, where I belong to. And I never knew what they were doing and what is this machine about, but now from your presentation, at least I know what's going on there. You also presented a conceptual overview as how institutional mechanism and such new technologies get into adoption, and to some extent, because of its dynamic nature, gets into also the adoption mode. So I'm also curious what kind of improvisations probably you may have seen at a micro level or individual farmer level. So that is just in nutshell. What was very interesting for me from your presentation was also talking about this rebound effect or Gibbon's paradox. I never knew that the rebound effect has this wonderful name from the scientist. Probably what I learned from it is the opportunity cost we talk about. So if not doing this, doing what? So other than the co-benefits which they share. Actually, I have questions. I will start from there. But then the last point which I want to make from your presentation, and also just a correction and summary, that farmers' perception and preference matter, and it is also shaped by science other than cost, other than yield, other than its aesthetic sense, its durability, and many more aspects. Probably you can throw some light on that. And you do end with a very interesting point that it may not be the solution, but a sustainable transition to saving groundwater, which is a kind of a political economy or ecology situation. Am I right?
Yes, Mansee.
Really
Thanks
put
for
it in.
summarizing it. Thanks for summarizing it in a
I
short.
try to be a good student listening to my speakers. We are nearing 400 sessions, and I'm learning so much from all of you. So, a deep gratitude to really make this presentation. It's you see these things, but you don't know, and then you know a little bit like me, and you try to have more questions. I want to start with a very pertinent question, which anybody and everybody as a user, I'm not a user, but still, I would like to know as a scientist, for that matter, you talked about one side of the game. And that is probably also the political economic side of it, the benefits of having the LLL technology for that matter. And you know what the question is coming. So, uh, what kind of costs, other than the cost of the machine itself, which you have already made a point, what kind of challenges the laser land leveling is really having in getting people's acceptance in the larger, or whether it is not percolated to other parts of the country, or whether it is a technology. I'm sure there are some challenges, because in India, if we can learn how to extract groundwater in no time after the invention of electricity and invention of the tullu pumps and motors, depending on my pocket, I can have a bigger motor. And probably that was the devil of groundwater extraction. I'm sure if it has so many benefits or co-benefits, it would have spread like a wildfire across the country. What is it stopping from?
Thanks, Mansee, for the question. It's interesting because the technology was early. Of course, it was introduced in Punjab and Northwest India much earlier. Later introduced in uh, in Madhya Pradesh, in Karnataka.
Yes.
But it picked up much faster in Punjab. Punjab has a history of picking such technologies much earlier compared to
Yes.
other regions. But
Yes, in
something
the
which is
farming sector, yes.
yes. Um, Something limiting other regions is accessibility to this technology. Like, of course, knowledge is a part, but even if you have a knowledge, as I said, this is like a machinery. You need to have accessible to this technology. One of the biggest restriction is that you need to do it in transition period, just before, once you harvest the crop, before the next crop, you need to level it. And if you have accessibility to this technology, if someone has a technology in the village, you could do that. If nobody has it, you may not do that. It picked up in Punjab because farmers already, there were like a lot of tractors, and
You
the cost of
mentioned
the
that.
technology, the cost of technology was 3.5 lakhs. And like there was some subsidies on this technologies, which ends up being 2.5 lakhs. This may not be a substantial sum for a big farmers in Punjab, but it's still a substantial sum for a farmer in Bihar or in Madhya Pradesh, or like it depends. And so what happened in Punjab is that even a medium-sized farmer started buying it and renting it out and doing a break even in 2 or 3 seasons. So they could do that. So biggest constraint is accessibility to this technology, but it's again a chicken egg problem, right? If people will be buying this technology if there is a demand for technology, that would lead to the
Yes.
supply of technology. But then supply would also happen if there is like, it's like which starts first. In this case, I felt that supply has driven this adoption more than the demand. There were some demands, but mostly driven by accessibility of this technology. That's the major constraint or the major challenge of adoption of this technology.
Very interesting, because as I mentioned, because I think a lot of farmers from Punjab come to do a farming support system in Madhya Pradesh. I had this experience of witnessing it of late, actually. Um, I still have this nagging question. Sorry to bother you about it, but you know, uh, the farmers will never be motivated to reduce the groundwater extraction, come what may. So that may not be the factor to use this machine. There has to be some other zing thing, or there must be some hitch, that maybe it is taxation system or some parts, or that it is not going to other states as rapidly. But because you may be aware of the drip irrigation system, which is so much promoted also to reduce the groundwater extraction and reduce water consumption in the agriculture field. And I'm just curious, how does this machine work? And is it something about the training the farmers on use of the machine that is keeping them away, or are there not many vendors, or can there be ways that we can really now motivate farmers to be more responsibly farming to reduce groundwater consumption? And I would like to use it as an emotional quotient. I know that it may not work because we are a very strange society as humanity, where we are using pesticides to kill insects and we are willing to eat them as food. I mean, this is my biggest question in farming industry, in agriculture sector. How come we use poison to kill insects and we are okay to kill ourselves? Are you getting my point, right? So we are in that society. We live in that situation. Given that situation, money is probably not the factor. Is there something about the technology that farmers, or is it something about the taxation in other states? what is your background study talking about? Because you really laid out very well your methodology in your states of study. But I would still like to get an overview how farmers from other parts of the country seeing it. I'm sure the message goes across because when the farm laws were raised, yeah, we could not have the farm law protest across the country because of the institutional hurdles. But I'm sure technology is spread across the country, even if it is not adopted. So, what is it stopping?
Mm, My based on my fieldwork, I felt like farmers do understand. They're also much more
Mhm.
responsible. They know what groundwater is doing. But it's like, are they taking any immediate action? That's a different story. They
That's a
know
different
it
story
was a different,
altogether.
yeah,
Mhm.
altogether. But
But
they
they will
know
not
and
be
they're
doing
conscious about
responsible farming. Do you think that
it.
we can emotionally
It's
manipulate their decisions on that they should
it's
be
bit
doing organic and not to consume more groundwater? What is your understanding?
it's bit of a tricky situation, right? They're like fighting on their livelihood. So they're like
Mm-hmm.
trying to like make some money out of it and like survival.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's they don't have the luxury of taking any
Yeah,
risk. Yeah, so it's like
mhm.
whenever we talk about it, I we come from a very privileged position. It's
Absolutely.
like yeah, farmers like if we put ourselves in their shoes, I won't do that because there's a huge
Mhm.
risk involved in those things. So I don't think it's they're trying to be responsible as much as possible. That's what I say. From if we put
Mm-hmm.
ourselves in their shoes, uh,
Yes.
this technology, something unique is that, um, as you know, the technology development happens in an ecosystem, right? It's not just like you can just buy the machine. You need to do
Yes,
servicing.
of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's yeah. So all those things, not Western Punjab, they have an ecosystem. It's not just like they are
Okay.
manufacturers. They are like people who could do those modifications. Also, in other regions, it's slowly emerging. So Bihar,
Mm.
like it's emerging over time. It's much lagging behind. Also, a lot of push from government happened in Punjab, and because of the water
Mm.
crisis, there was a lot of push from the
Mm.
government. So they were like introduced to
Yes.
farmers. But farmers, this is a tricky thing that it was introduced to farmers to save water, but farmers used it and find out there are several other benefits of using it.
Okay.
They picked it
Mm.
up because of all those benefits, not just
Mm.
water saving
And
per
that's
se.
an additionality. Saving groundwater is
Additionality,
kind of an additionality. And
additionality. So
positive,
that's the
positive
other way around.
externality. Let's say
It's
positive
it's an
externality.
Yeah, it's the other way around. So in case of
Mm.
Bihar, there is no crisis of groundwater happening in Bihar. So
Yes.
it's like there is no
Mm.
push from that side. They say that
Mm.
there is, but this additional that's interesting how policymakers kind of position it and how farmers perceive it. So for them, it's like if they
Mm.
position us like water saving, I'm like we don't care about like we don't need to worry about water saving at this point of time. So that's like a
Mm.
point from a farmer who is in Bihar, right? He has other things to take care of rather than at
Mm.
this thing. Water saving is not his priority. Even in Punjab, water saving is not the main thing which drive the technology,
Absolutely.
right?
I mean that is very pragmatic also. Let's not put all the burden on them to save the world.
But I find is that when you're talking about policymakers, I realize that then we are positioning it wrong. There are several other benefits
Mm.
associated with the technology,
Ah.
which have not even been realized many times by researcher. Right? So
Mm.
it's like we need to understand why farmers are using it, all the learnings of farmers. You can
Mm.
use those, and this is very context specific. It's not the same for all
Mm.
farmers. So there are
Mm.
farmers talking about how he can reduce the bund size because
Yes.
if it's a slope, the water get accumulates in
Mm.
one place and he needs to create a much thicker bund.
Yes.
Now the
Mm.
water is uniformly distributed. He can create a thinner bund.
Mm.
So like so there are very context specific reasons like
Mm.
which
Mm.
farmers
Mm.
realized
Mm. Mm.
using this technology. You could use those to position or disseminate the technology in the other regions. If you see the
Mm.
current positioning of the technology in Bihar is water saving. But farmers in Bihar is like, why I want to save water because
Is
I
it
don't
even
have a
required?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's a reason, right?
But
It's
for every farmer, end of the day, it is cost and benefit. What am I investing in all forms? Of course, money, human resource, and any other resource. And what do I get out of it? And I'm just wondering, in the LLL machine, what was the inception of this invention? In for that matter, why was it even made? You know?
Mhm. This was a precision leveling technology. The idea was to like have a leveled land And it's interesting. It's actually applied in like it was used in like leveling of roads. That was the origin of the
Wow.
technology.
Yeah, okay.
Then they realized that it's also good to have if you're doing a flooded irrigation, it's also good to have a level land, because usually when you do leveling, you could see they attach uh, like a plank behind the tractor, wooden plank or like steel
Yes,
planks.
like
But that's
an
it.
extension of plowing. So,
Yeah. But then that's very visual. The tractor drive, the tractor
mm,
operator decides whether it's leveled or not. We don't know whether it is leveled or not, right? It's like tractor operators' visual cues decide the level. But in this case, technology per se takes care of this aspect. So that's why it was invented. It is interesting how it evolved into a water saving technology, which was not its original use. But you could
yeah,
see it was not
that's a
invented
news
to
for
save
me.
water. Yeah,
That
it was
is a
not
news
invented
for
to
me
save water.
that, yeah. Yeah, because you know why I asked that question on why is it even invented? Because the genesis or the philosophy behind any innovation or invention for that matter will be the fundamental thing that will have a deeper impact in the society. So if we are discussing that this method is helping in reducing groundwater, and as you rightly mentioned, let us not have the burden of the method to take that responsibility. There has to be institutional mechanism. There has to be other ways to look at the groundwater. It's more, I think, if I understand you correctly so far, it is more to have, a better irrigated land for that matter, to have a better yield in that respect. But let me just go to another question, and maybe I request others to also pose their question. I see Ajit sir has a question. Maybe he can pose his question, and you can also read. Ajit sir is the second best student at W4W afternoon, because I attend all the sessions, and he's the most um, highest number of attendees made. Ajit sir comes. Ajit sir, would you like to unmute yourself or ask, or
Yeah, I
Subhash,
can.
I request you to
Good,
also
good
read?
evening,
Go
good
ahead.
evening, Mansi.
Good evening,
Good
how
evening to you.
sir? Yeah.
Sorry. Okay,
Mm.
my question is, see, there's so much of technology being available to trace
Mm.
the functionality of the subsoil water. The subsoil water has become a very, very critical issue, especially in urban areas, especially in highly populated, highly with multi-rise buildings, urban areas. And now one section of hydrogeologists with a little bit of inclining to seismology have have thought about it, that this subsoil functions like a sponge, and this sponge
Mm.
gets missing if you find it, the water is all gone, let's say about 50 meters, 100 meters below ground level, BGL, that band is totally vanished. It has happened in Delhi. I remember as a youngster in
Mm.
Delhi in 50s, we had water at ground level. And the government of India got into a big problem, and they started pumping out water from the subsoil. That was in 1950s, 50s and 60s. And as a youngster, we used to be playing with the water. But now, after about nearly 60 years, we find levels have gone to 100 meters below ground level. Now, I mean, it is coming to a different subject altogether. But your thing is so easy to trace out. I mean, anyone can take a. I mean, when they say lease your instrument, lease your system, or lease your technology, and chalk out the total mapping of groundwater mapping. So has anyone gone about doing this in the urban sector? I know you have done a lot in agriculture sector, in the urban and habitat usage of water. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajit.
Subhash?
Ajit
Mm.
ji. Yeah. Thanks for the question. It's beyond my expertise, but what happened in Delhi, I could update you, is that they banned uh, like the tube wells for household consumption. So they banned.
Mm.
So there are no more tube wells. You cannot apply for a new tube well collection. So they started a centralized water distribution system, mainly from Haryana and Punjab, like, so they brought canal water for like water use for, like, in Delhi. I don't know what's its effect on actual groundwater, but the groundwater levels in Delhi, I think it has at least slowed down the effects what you might have observed earlier, exploiting the groundwater for, like, household consumption. Again, this technology is not a technology which is used for urban settings. It's for rural settings where, especially in agriculture farms, where you can use this to level the farm and save the water. It doesn't measure the groundwater per se. It's just technology which helps in preparation of land through which you save groundwater. In urban settings, we don't. In urban settings, we don't use flooded irrigation, especially. So it may not be of much use in a special kind of urban setting setup. So I'm not aware of its application in an, like, an urban setting, to be honest.
Interesting. Let me just ask you a question, and I'm sharing the screen from your slide itself. And this question is about, do you see the screen?
Yes.
Your slide number 4.
Yes.
And because as an architect, I have been involved in many site planning projects at large scale, industrial and housing and academic institutions where we have had serious problems in land leveling. So I just want to get things clear from you, and also then following up a methodological question to you. And this diagram was very, very interesting for me when you showed this diagram with an unleveled land, which I call as a natural terrain. In architecture planning, we call it natural terrain. And you show a dip in the groundwater, and then you show a leveled thing, and you show a rise, or let's say lesser loss in the groundwater. So I want to just ask a question to you in this respect, because it is a good promotion idea, as this technology can save, but you all rightly mentioned and also mentioned that from road technology this leveling comes. I get worried when such technologies are also altering the landscape or the terrain of the place. Maybe my land gets better yield or water, but will it not affect in the surrounding areas? What is your understanding of it?
It does. It does. You're right. It is changing the terrain feature, right? Like, when you look it from a very systems perspective, it is like you're
Yes.
yeah. But what happened is that over time, especially in Punjab, if you see, it's already flat. It's like flat terrain. So yeah, and the irrigation system used is flooded irrigation. For a undulated terrain, I won't recommend a flooded irrigation system because you end up using a lot of water, right? But okay, let's put in a context of in a flat terrain. When the flooded irrigation system is used, this makes sense. You won't take it
That
and
also,
use it in a
very
use
good.
it in a, yeah. You won't use it in a non-flat terrain systems if you look it from that perspective.
And that also answers my previous question, as rest of the country, like half of the country already gets excluded for use of this machine because of the terrain or landscape. And probably then comes the soil condition that it cannot be used in the desert area. Of course, mountain area is gone. Then then coastal area it will be excluded. So that is quite understandable for me. Now comes a methodological question, which is more about for your research and PhD. Usually, I actually start with this question in most of the time, but because you presented it methodologically, I'm asking this question towards the end. What motivated you to really relate this machine with groundwater recharge or extraction or saving, when this machine was not meant to save groundwater? Because in any PhD we have to have a philosophical bounding, because after all we do a doctorate in philosophy, not doctorate in water or doctorate in ABC. I am asking this question because I have two of my very dear bachas sitting here and in this platform, Manikanta and Monica, my PhD bachas here. So I just want to know from you, how did you navigate your thoughts or decide upon linking a commercial product, a product for some other means, and linking it to saving groundwater? Because groundwater, as we discussed, saving it is additionality or accidental in this case. And the maker of this machine, the promoter of this machine, had no intent, come what may, to save groundwater. But why a research which further promotes this product uh, as a commercial product? Why would a research be interested in doing that? And will you or have you taken into consideration the long-term impact of using this machine? Because your research has, I kind of find the research to be a little bit biased in terms of looking at the advantages of this machine. What will be the long-term impact? You told us the positive impact of saving groundwater, but I am sure every bit of these innovations come with a package. When electricity came, when motor came, I started with this example. We were all going gaga about its practice in everyday life, but they see the long-term impact of it. What's your take, the philosophical take on promoting this kind of innovation or invention?
It's interesting because I'm currently writing a paper on my positionality and reflexivity of
Very
my
good. So
research
that's good
work.
to do.
So,
So I have been
this
always
is
tough in Friday.Waters thesis. I will be very honest on that. I
yeah.
call
So
myself
I'm
devil's
from
advocate.
yeah, but like how research are shaped. I often ask this question. Why I ask this question?
Yes,
It's often shaped by the funding. It's often shaped by the institution you're associated with.
yes. That's
This
good
all
to know
shape it.
because that's what
Yeah,
we discuss in
that's what
Friday.Waters
it.
thesis. It's
Yeah.
for
So
PhD candidates.
this technology, why I picked it? Because I got a funding from an organization which was promoting this technology. That's its positionality
Yes,
coming from,
fair
right?
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where it comes from, and why we are looking at very much in a very positive frame. Let me put it
Hmm.
this way: we are not looking at from a critical frame. We are rather looking into a from a
But
positive frame.
still, it will be your
And
responsibility to inform your funders about the long-term impact.
yes, yes. But something which I informed them is that. Uh, One thing interesting was that the funders or the technology promoters always assumed farmers are using it because it's saving water. So was the fundamental assumption they had. And but it was a bit
But that
puzzling.
was
That's the
not the
puzzling
fundamental
question.
reason they produced
Yeah,
this
but for me,
machine.
it's like if you listen to it, if you say, oh, people are using this in Punjab because it saves water, and you're like, what? But
Really?
are they like, yeah, that's a question, right? That's my starting motivation behind even this
Mhm.
frame. This is the technology I got funding for. For me, it's like, really? Are they using it because of that? That's what shaped my research questions. Not the topic, but my research questions are shaped by that.
Yes.
You could see it's mostly it's out of my own curiosity of like understanding or knowing more
Yeah.
about what's happening.
Mm.
That's what it shaped it. There is a
Mm.
bias involved in it. Like I often
Yes.
acknowledge the biases because
Yes.
there's a conflict of interest because I'm also working with organizations which developed or promote these technologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
But
there
then
is both
still,
set.
you still
Yeah,
owe that responsibility to inform them about the
yeah, I do, I
impacts.
do, I do,
Mm.
I do, I do. So it's like
Mm.
when we do declare conflict of interest statements, you're
Yes.
already much more explicit about it. We
Yes.
don't have a direct.
Absolutely.
I was not involved in promoting this technology. Neither my
Yes.
co-supervisor involved in promoting this technology. But we are looking at from an outsider now, right? An insider outsider to
Yes.
understand what's happening with it and understand more
Mm.
from a human
Mm.
perspective. As a researcher, I'm a social scientist. I'm not a water technologist. So
Yes. We
for
all are.
me, yeah, so we are trying to understand what's happening because
Mm.
often these technologies are looked from a very techno centric point of view rather
Mm-hmm.
than then we forget that it's interacting with a human who has its
Absolutely. Mm.
own ideas about it, own experience about it. That's why the techno-human interactions uh, become one of my core philosophy behind my research. So you could see that's one of the big important chain. If you
Uh,
walk through all the research questions I asked or
mm.
study put it together to underline this techno-human interaction, and also focusing on like we need to learn from the humans. Technology per se doesn't make some value,
Yes,
but we need to also
absolutely.
learn from it. That's the philosophy behind my work. To
Okay,
summarize it, yeah.
wonderful. Wonderful. Because I would also like to inform, I'm sure you are aware about it at about the social technological system framework, which evolved out of the social ecological system framework of Ostrom School,
Yes.
and TU Delft Planning and Technology Department works on it. At least I know Professor Rolf Kuneke, who has invested a lot of his years on working on social technical system. And in your presentation, you did talk about the farmer's perception and preference. So let me just have my last question. And if there are any questions from anyone, let me just also check YouTube. If there are any questions there, I can pick them up from there as well. But my last question to you on farmer's perception and preference, and I'm just framing it in a little bit more, Indianized way. My question now: what kind of jugaad you see if farmers have done after getting the system in place with them in their ownership? Do you see any improvisations or any jugaad done on it to even maximize other profits if there are, because they are not burdened with electricity, they are not burdened with water problems. I mean, they are already saving. But I'm sure there are certain things they want to save time, they want to save something else. Any jugaad you see in this machine?
Oh, yes. So, again, just starting from what you just mentioned, um, given an option to do the study in a different way, I would have used a systems approach to study it, because
Now you
that's
can do
much more.
it. Why not?
Oh, it's been
With
difficult.
you
It's
there.
easy to say that. Yeah, it's much more. But at the end, so I didn't explicitly state it because that was not my starting point, because that was become an end point. At the end, you go back and say, "Oh, maybe we should have looked at it from a systems
That's
perspective."
always every PhD, huh? You
But
want to change all over again.
yeah, all over again. Then your supervisor say that just submit your thesis and get out. So that's
Just
that's
get
what happens
on,
with,
get over.
yeah. So talking about jugaad, like I would say farmers do a lot of innovations themselves. Like when farmers get this technology,
Absolutely.
yeah, they use it for different purpose. For example, something what they started doing is using it for leveling up bunds. So for potato
Wow.
plantation, because they need,
Ah,
you want to create a bund. It's good to have a
ah.
level land to make the bund maker.
Yes.
So
And
that's like,
even for flood irrigation for that matter.
so this such things they do innovate a lot of things. It's now very highly used in potatoes and vegetables, not to save
Oh,
water, but to have a
wow.
level land so that they can make a better, good level bunds, like the raised bed. So if you have a good raised bed, if you level, it's good for the vegetable or potato crops. So they do find different benefits out of it, which you're not even seeing that. Or also not only in agriculture, now they are also using it for leveling up. So in Western Uttar Pradesh, if you travel across Bagpat, Shamli, there's a lot of clean factories, the brick clints. So brick clints are made out of exploiting the topsoil from the
Yes.
agriculture land. Then they
Fine
use
soil.
LLL. Then they use LLL to level it.
Wow.
So it's like, so yeah, so there are such
It's a
utilities which
multi functionality.
uh, give it to the end users. They figure out stuffs to use. You don't need to tell them what they should use it for. They are pretty smart and innovative to find out different ways of using it.
I think I'll take the last word from you on this as a social technical system rather than really highly technical system. And I see Manikanta has a quick question. Manikanta, go ahead, and then I will do the formal thanks.
Sure.
Go ahead. And
Thanks,
welcome to
Subhash.
Germany also, Manikanta, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
While
Hope to see you
Subhash
soon.
went back to Delhi from Bonn, Manikanta and I actually landed in Germany this week.
Yes. Thanks, Subhash. Thanks for the very nice presentation. Very clear. My question comes from my experience in the informal groundwater markets, right? Especially
Mhm.
access to tube well and the inequity in it. So, is there a similar inequity in terms of access to technology here? I mean, I understand that Punjab, everyone are like large scale farmers, and everyone would be having money to, and you also spoke about renting it out. But in a
Yes.
sense, if it does scale up, do you see an intervention and a, a kind of a hint that the government would pitch in and come up with a subsidy even for this? So yeah, that's something
Now that
was.
he's in ministry.
Uh,
Good
Manikandan, to
question.
answer the first question, yes, there is an issue of equity, but there is already subsidies existing. There is like subplan machines, like machinery subplan. There is a policy which subsidizes this technology which is already existing. Accessibility issue for a small farm, for a small farmer, if you ask a service provider to come to his small farm, they may not go there because it's far, and just for a small farm, they may not. There is an additional cost of driving it to that small farm. So what a lot of these farmers do is that they club themselves with the farmers who are nearby, club with the large farmer nearby in the same village. So what they do is like talk to the lot of conversation which happens is that you ask the large farmer, is okay, in his place the machine is going to operate it for 4 days. It's like, can you also just send him to my field? So this, like, we understand those farmers also live in a uh, they use their own social networks in a community, right? So they know that this mission is going to be operated in some neighbor's field, so they get it to their field. Again, it's inbuilt on their social network. How good is their network with this large farmer or the cluster of farmers? Whether they were able to convince them. So there is an equity issue, but often these equity issues are somehow neutralized based on because the cohesion and the social systems they are in, which is operating to a great extent. So also we've realized that if there are more number of machineries, my second paper is that on that. If there are more number of machineries available at village level, small farmers have a higher probability of getting accessibility to it. If there are like more machines, they're more likely to get accessible because the competition is there. There is more machines available even for small farmers. So what happened in this system is that with on an average, every village has at least one machinery in Punjab or in the neighboring village. But if there are 2 or 3 in the vicinity, usually even a small farmer can get access to this machinery, and thus more availability of machine has reduced the equity issues.
Right,
Classic
right.
Also a
Just,
classic solution to tragedy of the commons for collective action. Manikant, over to you.
No, just like a quick follow-up that, but these social networks are not egalitarian in its own way. I mean, they have their scales and caste system and the class system that they operate over there, right? Does that also reflect over there? I mean, it's very evident in the water lords and tube wells. That's the reason I'm asking for this technology.
It is. But if you know, it is important. And if it's always like there is there's a master, like, I won't say master servant relationship, but there's an elitist thing of like, I'm a big farmer and everybody's like there is some such power relationships existing within a village. Often villagers operate in that power structures. So you kind of tell them, request them, not command them. So it's like they do manage those power structures. There is an regulatory system. But in Punjab, it's also in a unique case where you might know uh, the land is mainly owned by a subset of caste. Not everybody owns it, and like
It's a community.
traditionally, not community. Jat community like has a major land agreement. Other communities have some land. It's not like if it's going to a village, 95% belong to a particular community, and other communities have very little land. That communities are of course marginalized. In this case, there were some interesting observations like they still do. Villages stay in a cohesion, and in such cases, there are some marginalization, but they do play in those power equations and they do get access to it. Not easily, it's not there. They won't get it on a priority basis. They may get once the large farmers or the elites were able to use it and they get the rest. But still, they were able to. One thing about this technology is that you don't need to use it every year. So it's like, if not this year, they're able to get it next year. So it's like, unlike most technologies which you need it every year, this still has this flexibility. So the accessibility was also easier because of such flexibility with the technology and with the society.
Okay, I think we have to bring this conversation to a close, and I hope you enjoyed, Subhash, conversing with us. I thoroughly enjoyed talking about it. The more I talk about water, and particularly when I have sessions related to farming, agriculture, and all, and I start asking questions to myself, do I really want to become farmer? Which has been my lifetime goal. Someday I would like to become a farmer, and I hope I do in my this lifetime. But having these conversations at least helps me touch that community indirectly, if not directly. It has been my, one of my favorite topic, I must say, food, farming, and water. But we have really had very few sessions on these, and especially we did not talk about soil in your session, which is land in this case, what you talk about, which is something very interesting. I would like to take in some other conversation. What is the relation between soil and land when we talk about these things? Because when we are tilling, when we are leveling, we are playing with the soil, and that will be some discussion. And I always ask my speakers, if you know someone talking about these topics, do connect with us so that we can take the conversation further. Because at W4W, we strongly believe that water conversations are extremely crucial for water conservation. Before I let you go, I would like to announce next Friday, we have a very interesting session as usual, like this. On October 17th, we have Friday book reading session, and it is part of the International Association of the Study of the Commons series. And we are going to discuss a book on rivers, cities, and people. It's a 2025 edition from Elsevier, and from Elsevier, if I remember, no, from Routledge. And we have Vanashri Banerjee and Mark J. Van Art from Erasmus University, who are the editors and the speakers of the session. Both are my teachers as well. That's at 5 p.m. IST on October 17th. Next week, we also have our signature series, Wednesdays for Water, on September 15th at 5 p.m. IST. And again, we are coming up with a very, very interesting discussion, which is a newly started series on riverscape. And we started in September, and this is the second of the series, where we talk about Vadodara, in bracket, no riverfront development on Vishwamitra River. So we have started a series on discussing riverfront development projects. And we are talking about one rare example of Vadodara in the country, which will not have the typical riverfront development. And we have really speakers where we are going to hear from the horse's mouth how could they stop the riverfront development in Vadodara. So this is what we have next week at our water conversation series. Do stay tuned with us. We are inching slowly towards 400 sessions, making us the longest water conversation with over 600 speakers, already part of the W4W family. And we are super proud of our speakers' contribution, not only in our sessions, but also in their projects, in their practice, in their science and society. Thank you so much, all of you. And thanks, Subhash, for taking our time and also answering difficult questions and naive questions from all of us. Thanks a lot. Please take care, and all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you, Mansee. Bye.